In 2025, the class that once built the American dream is facing a challenge they never thought they would encounter in their lifetime. Food prices skyrocketing beyond imagination.
I have to cut back. Not the necessary. No, I don't buy.
I got laid off a year and a half ago, and so trying to save money with Social Security, it's impossible.
Haven't been going out as much, been cutting back on the acai bowls, washing my car myself.
$7 for a dozen eggs, $9 for a box of strawberries, $5 for a bag of sandwich bread. That's not the price at a high-end restaurant, but what Americans are paying at budget supermarkets across the country right now. The American middle class had long believed that as long as they worked hard, saved, and raised their children well, life would be fine. But now, many families in the wealthiest states of the country are giving up. Not because they are lazy, but because they can't even handle a trip to the market. In this video, we will explore 10 states where the middle class is giving up, because food prices have become a nightmare. What made them give up? And why did the states once seen as symbols of prosperity become the first to surrender to the middle class? The content of this video is built by us based on reputable and public sources. The purpose is to provide you with a perspective, not to condemn or represent any individual or organization. We encourage you to discuss and expand your understanding. Now let's move on to the first state, where all the price lists are beyond the imagination of middle-class consumers. In 2025 in California, a basic grocery basket, including milk, bread, eggs, and meat, costs nearly a week's minimum wage. For the middle class, it's no longer a matter of spending, but a survival challenge among the shelves.
The prices are just too on the high side. It's on the high side, especially for middle class, low-income earners.
In Los Angeles, a pound of chicken has reached $9.25, organic eggs nearly $11 per dozen, and vegetable prices have risen more than 40% in just 8 months. Those who once lived comfortably in cities like San Diego and Sacramento are now having to drive 2 hours to rural areas to find cheaper food, or rely on churches that distribute free food. Many middle-class families have to go to the supermarket at 8 p.m., not to avoid crowds, but to hunt for items nearing their expiration date, deeply discounted. Some have decided to cut back as much as possible, only buying what is truly necessary to save their already meager salary.
That I used to buy, don't really buy them anymore, or I cut down on, most of, my list.
It seems that this is not a high-end lifestyle, but rather a struggle for survival under the guise of a prosperous state. Although California has a high average income, the price to pay is high taxes, expensive living costs, and strict climate policies that tighten the agricultural sector. Recently, many farms have been forced to reduce production or shut down, leading to a significant decrease in food supply. Meanwhile, gasoline prices and transportation costs are causing retail prices to rise week by week. And the middle class, who are neither rich enough to avoid the price storm nor poor enough to receive subsidies, are gradually at risk of becoming the first to fall in silence. This woman has a small family. She used to be a school employee with a not-so-high salary. But when she witnessed the daily price increases at the nearby supermarkets like Walmart and Target, she couldn't help but worry for herself and the middle class in general.
Remember, this is not the only thing we got to do. We got to pay bills, we got to pay electricity, we got to pay car insurance. Children are got to go to school, we got to give them money and all that. So, it's a whole lot.
California used to be a symbol of prosperity, a place where everyone believed that hard work would lead to a better life. But now, it is the very people who once upheld society, teachers, workers, veterans, who are having to choose between a decent meal and utility bills. One of the wealthiest states, yet it allows the middle class to slide into oblivion. If that isn't a warning sign, then what else could wake up America? California lacks neither money nor technology. It only lacks fairness and a realistic perspective from policymakers. To help the middle class, we need to control food costs from the source, restore in-state agricultural production, and put people, not just economic indicators, at the center. Because if California lets the middle class give up, what will happen to the rest of America? If California exhausts the middle class with skyrocketing food prices every day, New York is making them feel as if they no longer belong in the very place they have been tied to for a lifetime. New York, once proud to have it all, but now it might be lacking something fundamental: the ability to afford a meal every day.
I'm about to show you $10 for the groceries in America. Bread and eggs.
Things are getting really hard. Food costs so much. And a lot of people do not even know what to do anymore.
In once thriving neighborhoods like Brooklyn or Queens, many convenience stores now have cash-only signs, cutting back on card services due to high bank fees, making it difficult for the elderly. Large supermarkets have simultaneously cut long-term discount programs, causing the price of a loaf of bread to soar to $5.99, a gallon of milk to $6.79, and imported fruit to nearly $10 per pound. Middle-class people are now hunting for clearance items, buying near-expiry food, or even exchanging food in online groups. People can't help but wonder why a wealthy state with hundreds of world-famous billionaires could end up in this situation. In fact, rental prices and operating costs in NYC are among the highest in the country, placing a huge burden on the food supply chain. Post-COVID, a multitude of small businesses closed, leaving vacancies filled by large corporations, places that prioritize profit over community. In addition, the transportation system is frequently congested, transportation costs are high, and the lack of basic food price control policies further risks pushing New York into a cost of living crisis. A former firefighter in the Bronx, living on retirement and SNAP benefits, shared, "Before, $200 from SNAP was enough for me to eat for a whole month. Now I'm out by the 12th. Every time I go to the market, I feel it's even harder than when I was in the military." Charles recounted that he had to choose between buying high blood pressure medication and fresh meat, and often only ate bread with peanut butter for several days in a row. New York still has its dazzling buildings, $1,000 dinner parties, and rooftop cocktails. But beneath that glamorous layer, a class that once prided itself on being middle class is quietly giving up. Now New York needs more than just short-term relief packages. It needs sustainable solutions to keep the middle class from being pushed to the margins. New York is the city of hope. But to keep that hope, we must take action. Not to become richer, but so that no one is left behind in their own neighborhood. The next state that was once considered affordable, where many people prioritized moving to, is no longer cheap. That is Texas. Texas used to be the ideal place to move back to live simply after retirement. But now, those who moved here for the low prices are having to consider leaving, because food prices here are no longer as low as rumored. In Austin and Dallas, beef prices have increased by more than 40% compared to 2023. A pound of ribs can reach $14.99, while a dozen regular eggs have surpassed $7. Many Texans have to drive 60 to 90 minutes to small towns or neighboring states like Oklahoma to buy cheaper food. The once bustling Walmart supermarkets are now empty at the beginning of the week, only crowded during discount hours or flash promotions. It can be observed that in Texas, the issue is not the lack of food, but rather that the middle-class people can no longer afford to access it every day. And the painful reason? Texas attracts millions of migrants from expensive states like California, Illinois, New York. The rapidly growing population puts significant pressure on the supply chain, especially in suburban areas. Additionally, Texas is affected by the continuous changes in weather, causing domestic agricultural prices to rise sharply, while price control policies are nearly non-existent. An IT engineer living in the suburbs of Houston shared, "My family is not poor. But every time we go to the supermarket, it's a stressful experience. Last month, we had to skip breakfast for a few days to make up for the cost of gas and groceries." He also mentioned that he and his wife canceled their membership at Whole Foods supermarket, switched to shopping at flea markets, and accepted less fresh food. Texas has always been seen as the last bastion for the working class, a place where low costs compensate for just enough income. But when food prices exceed the tolerance limits of even the most frugal, the concept of middle class in Texas may be losing its meaning. Many people believe that when a state where workers can no longer afford basic meals, even without an income tax, it cannot be called a paradise. Texas needs to invest heavily in the domestic food distribution system, prioritize short supply chains, and protect the working class from price shocks through transportation control and encouraging local production. Because if Texas, with its vast land and independent spirit, cannot even retain its middle class, Where else can they find hope? And if Texas is a slap in the face to the belief in cheap American retirement, then Florida is where the dream of peaceful old age is also at risk of becoming a nightmare, with every bill at the checkout. Florida used to be the retirement dream for millions of Americans. But by 2025, more and more elderly people have to grow their own vegetables, barter eggs, and gather leftover food just to get by for the week. In cities like Tampa and Fort Lauderdale, food prices have skyrocketed. Milk reached $7 per gallon, fresh tomatoes nearly $4 per pound, and frozen salmon over $20 per pound. Senior communities in Florida are starting to adopt the community garden model, where residents grow vegetables, share eggs, and trade food instead of buying it at the supermarket. Some pay-what-you-can food markets have emerged, allowing the elderly to take food based on their ability to pay, something that was once unimaginable in this once prosperous state. It's hard to believe that a place once considered a paradise resort has now become a brain teaser between people and food prices. Florida's problem may stem from immigration. This state is not only a tourist destination, but also home to nearly 1/5 of the nation's retired population. The rapid increase in the elderly population has led to a high demand for stable food supply, but a low domestic production capacity. Along with that are unusual weather factors such as heavy storms, droughts, and floods, which have affected the agricultural season, causing a significant drop in production. Meanwhile, the state also lacks strong policies to subsidize the elderly, causing retirees living on fixed incomes to be affected by market fluctuations. Florida needs basic food subsidy policies for the elderly, incentives for budget-friendly food chains, and a reminder that there is no real retirement paradise if those who built America have to choose between dinner and monthly medication. Can you imagine, in just 1 year, the price of a basic shopping cart in Phoenix has increased more than the total increase of the past 5 years combined? Now, what makes the middle class sweat is not the heat of this state, but every time they go to the supermarket and see the food prices rising every day. In cities like Phoenix or Tucson, many retirees have returned to work at grocery stores, supermarkets, or post offices, just to earn extra money for food. The price of vegetables in Arizona has increased by an average of 30 to 45% over the past 2 years. A bunch of lettuce costs nearly $4.50, fresh eggs over $6.90 a dozen, and chicken exceeds $10 per pound in many places. Retirement communities have started cutting back on meal portions, with many places switching from meat lunches to thin vegetable soup with bread. Once a dream state for retirement, what has made Arizona so expensive now? Arizona largely depends on food sources from outside the state. But in 2025, rising gas prices and uncontrollable transportation costs caused retail prices here to be nearly 20% higher than the national average. Meanwhile, programs supporting the elderly have not been expanded, and SNAP levels are lower than actual inflation, leaving many retirees behind. We used to say, work hard and then retire in Arizona as a reward for a lifetime. But now, that reward is being taken away bit by bit by grocery bills. The solution is not just subsidies, but rebuilding a fair distribution system, investing in local food infrastructure, and recognizing the value of workers before they leave this state for good. If not, Arizona will not only lose its people, but it might also lose the soul of its middle class. If Arizona is a land parched of faith, just a few hours' drive away, the people of Nevada are also gradually retreating from their dream in the desert, not because of gambling, but because vegetables are too expensive. Every year, millions of tourists come to Las Vegas to spend money, but the residents of Nevada are now having to count every penny just to get through the week. In Las Vegas, you can bet $10 to win $100. But when you step out of the supermarket, $100 is sometimes only enough for an empty shopping cart. According to the April 2025 report from the Las Vegas Review Journal, food prices in Nevada have increased by an average of 22% compared to the same period in 2024, with milk and eggs rising by as much as 35%. Many budget grocery stores like Smith's and Food 4 Less have closed branches in middle-class neighborhoods like North Las Vegas or the suburbs of Henderson. 3 Square Food Bank recorded a nearly doubling in the number of people seeking assistance within 12 months. In fact, Nevada does not have a large agricultural sector and relies almost entirely on imports from California, Arizona, and beyond. When these states face crises, food prices in Nevada skyrocket. Additionally, high transportation costs along with inflation in rental prices in Las Vegas are making it impossible for small retail chains to survive. Meanwhile, the state government has yet to implement mechanisms for controlling food prices or protecting informal workers, putting the middle class at risk of being silently erased. Nevada used to be a symbol of opportunity where people could start anew. But with the current food prices, even the hardest working people are giving up. No one thinks that in a city that spends money like water, there are elderly people who have to count every can of soup to last the whole week. It's time for Nevada to make a new bet. Not on hotels or casinos, but on investing in the people, the food distribution system, and basic living. Because when the middle class starts to give up, that's when the American dream in Nevada might no longer exist. From the dazzling lights of Vegas, we return to the Midwest, once the heart of the American working class. But now, even in Illinois, many middle-class people are giving up on the dream just because a full meal has become a luxury. According to the March 2025 report from the Chicago Tribune, food prices in the Chicago area have increased by an average of 19.8% compared to the previous year, with red meat and eggs rising by over 30%. Some supermarkets like Jewel Osco or Mariano's have closed in many middle-income neighborhoods in the west and south side, forcing residents to travel more than 3 to 5 miles to find a grocery store. Nearly 1/4 of adults in Cook County now rely on food banks at least once a month. Empty shelves, shopping carts with only a few cheap items, have now become a familiar sight in what was once a symbol of American workers. Illinois has one of the highest business tax rates and operating costs in the United States, causing many retail chains to cut back on their branches. Meanwhile, wages are not keeping pace with the rate of food inflation. Meanwhile, the wealth gap in Chicago is becoming increasingly severe. Organic food is still abundant in wealthy neighborhoods, but working-class areas are nearly turning into food deserts. The policy of cutting SNAP benefits and the lack of support for small-scale stores are causing the middle class to be forgotten. It's time for Illinois and all of America to take a look back. A strong society is not built with skyscrapers, but with families who have enough food in their refrigerators. If the middle class continues to let go, the American dream will no longer be the dream of the majority, but just a sad memory of the generation that once believed in it. A report from Colorado Public Radio states that food prices in Denver and Boulder have increased by an average of 17.3% in just the past 12 months. Especially, basic items like milk, eggs, and chicken have increased by more than 25%, forcing many middle-class families to reduce their portion sizes or switch to cheaper canned foods. More than 45% of surveyed Colorado residents said they cannot afford both rent and food in the same month. Why a place once called the paradise for the middle class is gradually turning into a hotspot for prices. The population increase after the pandemic has caused real estate prices and the cost of living to skyrocket in major cities like Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs. Meanwhile, the minimum wage and average income have not kept pace with inflation, especially in the service and healthcare sectors, which are the main industries for the middle class here. Real estate investment incentives have led to many traditional residential areas being replaced by high-end rental properties, driving up the cost of living even further. The truth is that Colorado does not lack food, but it does lack access to affordable food for wage earners, those who once built the foundation of the community. Perhaps Colorado should consider that each neighborhood could build a community kitchen or shared garden where people contribute, receive, and coexist together. Along with that, it is urgent to protect agricultural land from speculation, support local cooperatives, and expand affordable food markets for middle-income earners. Colorado once thrived thanks to the land. Now it's time to thrive thanks to each other. But to maintain that, we need more than kindness. We need decisive actions from policy to community. If in Colorado, the rising costs are causing residents to gradually pull away, then in Hawaii, once dreamed of as a retirement paradise, the middle class now has to leave not because of turbulent seas, but because the price of milk is more expensive than a plane ticket. A gallon of milk in Honolulu can now cost up to $9.50. Yes, nearly $10 for an item that was once a staple of the American family meal. And that's just the tip of the iceberg in a series of food price challenges that are making thousands of middle-class households on the islands worry every time they go grocery shopping. According to data from the Hawaii State Department of Agriculture, the price of imported food has increased by more than 22% over the past 18 months. Basic items like milk, eggs, fresh vegetables, and beef are priced 2 to 3 times higher than the average in the 48 contiguous states. Many local residents share that they have to spend 40 to 50% of their income just to buy food and essential household items. Hawaii used to make people want to come and live there. But in 2025, the middle class just wants to leave for a more comfortable life. The fact is that up to 90% of food in Hawaii is imported, completely reliant on maritime and air transportation. When global logistics costs rise, Hawaii is hit the hardest. Additionally, the average wage has not kept pace with inflation, while the state government continues to impose high consumption taxes, making all products more expensive. Additionally, the increase in high-end tourist service areas is pushing local residents out of urban areas, raising transportation and living costs. Hawaii has never been a cheap place to live, but by 2025, it has exceeded the financial limits of even those who had meticulously prepared for retirement. When even retired teachers, those who once educated the new generations, can no longer live peacefully on the land they love, we must ask the question, who are we prioritizing? If there is no reform in the supply chain, food tax support, and policies protecting indigenous residents, then the retirement paradise will only be for millionaires and wealthy tourists. In Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, food banks now serve not only the unemployed. More and more people with full-time jobs, mechanics, library staff, nurses, have to line up to receive free food because they work but still can't afford enough to eat. In areas like Erie, Altoona, and the Appalachian foothills, dozens of small supermarkets and grocery stores have closed in the past 2 years, leaving behind food deserts, areas without fresh food retailers within a 10 to 15-mile radius. Elderly people without cars or who don't know how to use ordering apps have become direct victims. Many eat canned foods, instant noodles, and cheap frozen meals year-round. It is known the rising operational costs of retail chains, combined with the labor shortage in logistics and retail, are causing supermarkets to raise prices to survive. While prices are rising every day, wages in Pennsylvania seem to be stagnant, and if they do increase, it is very slow. Many areas still maintain a minimum wage of $7.25 per hour, unchanged since 2009. Meanwhile, food tax policies and food assistance remain inadequate, especially in rural and suburban areas with large populations of older middle-class residents. Pennsylvania used to be a symbol of the American dream: hard work, stability, and sufficiency. But now, the people who once built that foundation have to leave, or live in suffering. The government needs to deploy mobile food buses, delivering vegetables, eggs, and milk directly to rural residential areas on a regular basis. Community organizations can organize intergenerational meals, where young people bring food and chat with lonely elderly individuals. The policy of subsidizing food for the elderly needs to be expanded to areas without retail infrastructure. We just passed through 10 states, where the middle class, the backbone of America for decades, is gradually giving up. Not because of laziness, not because of lack of effort, but because of a system that seems no longer to have room for decent people who just want to live honorably. It's not just numbers. It's the worry every time I step into the supermarket. It's the feeling of anxiety and a bit of helplessness when you can't provide enough for your family, even though you still go to work every day. It's the nostalgia for an America where food was once abundant and prices were fair. Which state do you live in? Are food prices where you live still acceptable? Please share your story in the comments section below. Sometimes, a single share can become a beacon of light for many others. If you think this video deserves more attention, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. We will continue to bring authentic and emotionally rich perspectives on life in America, things that mainstream media often do not cover. All the data in this video is compiled from publicly available and reliable sources at the time of production. The video does not provide investment, political, or legal advice. The purpose is to help the audience better understand the socio-economic changes happening across America through an analytical and emotional perspective. Thank you for watching until the end of the video. See you in the next journeys, where truth and humanity are still cherished.